Aloha and welcome to Is This For Real? My name is Gregory Dunn. I'm the President and CEO of Hawaii's Better Business Bureau. We're really fortunate today to have Jackie Boland, who's the Director of Community Outreach for AARP of Hawaii, here to talk with us a little bit about how folks can protect themselves and the things that AARP is doing in our community to work with seniors and help them to protect themselves against fraud. So Jackie, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about AARP of Hawaii? How did you come to work at AARP, and what are some of the things you folks are doing in the community now?
Well, I'm the Community Outreach Director for AARP, so I do the public education campaigns and community service programs. AARP is a membership organization for people 50 and older, and we basically fight for their needs and interests and try to give people the kind of information that will help them make good decisions. In the case of fraud, we want to give people information that can help them avoid being victimized by fraud and prevent scams before they happen. We're very concerned that as you get older, your capacity to earn grows smaller, and once you're retired and on a fixed income, if you lose your nest egg and your resources, you don't really have a lot of opportunity to recoup those.
I think people are surprised when they find out that seniors have this happen more than you would think. I mean, it's something that it is a significant problem in Hawaii. I mean, I'm sure you must have a story or two about a family that's unwittingly been faced with this.
A story or two would be right. Yeah. Nationally, about $3 billion a year is lost.
B as in billion?
Yeah, seniors are losing $3 billion a year to fraud and scams. So it is a big issue. And, I can tell you stories of fraud all day long, but the one that you hear the most about these days is that Microsoft scam, where somebody is calling your home, offering to help you fix the problems you're having with your Microsoft computer and claiming to be from Microsoft. You let them log onto your computer, and basically they load a virus onto your computer and then charge you for removing it.
So it's like a ransom then.
Oh, sure. And while they're in there, they have access to all the personal data that you're storing on that hard drive. So I was telling somebody last week, my family gets that call about 3 times a week.
Unbelievable.
I mean, and we recently did a teleforum with AARP members, and of all the scams people were talking about on that teleforum, that was the one that came up the most.
I think you said there was something like 60 people or so, or 50 people on that call said that they had personally received a call from someone saying, I'm calling to help you with that problem you're having with your computer.
Right. We pre-screened the questions, and that was the number one.
So in other words, if someone gets a call from someone on the outside that's not solicited, and telephone rings and they say, hey, I'm calling to help you unlock your computer or help you with that problem, that's probably a big red flag.
Right. Anybody who's ever called the help desk for either Microsoft or Apple, it's not like you get a person very quickly. So to think that they have the resources to call out and proactively seek out trouble, that would be stretching it, I'd say. So, lesson. If somebody's calling you to get your personal information unsolicited, probably you shouldn't give them any information. Not probably, definitely you shouldn't give them any information.
I know what I tell my mom and aunts and uncles is, if someone calls you and asks you for your personal information, no matter where they're from, just hang up the phone. It's not impolite, it's not rude, it's like hang up the phone. You don't need to talk to them.
And I actually use that as a strategy for everything, including purchases, donations to charity. My philosophy is, if I want to spend my money, I will seek out that opportunity. Nobody needs to seek it out for me. So if somebody calls me on the phone asking me to donate, no, I do not give money over the telephone. If somebody's calling to fix a problem that I haven't reported, no, I'll report a problem when I have it. No, I don't need my roof fixed. If you're calling me for that because you've been walking through my neighborhood, I can seek that service out, and it'll give me a chance, if I really do have a problem, to weigh various service providers against one another. No way am I going to take a random phone call. It's a good policy because then it gives you a refusal script for everyone. I'm sorry, I don't do financial transactions over the telephone. Ever.
That's a really good thing to remember.
Yeah, always have a good refusal script so that you don't have to feel personally obliged to keep a person on the phone and invent ways of getting them off, right? You could just have a hang-up decision. Your refusal script could just be hanging up, or some people screen their calls and never answer. But I just think just having something in your back pocket that you just pull out. I'm not good at being impolite. So just saying, I'm sorry, I never make financial decisions over the on the phone. That works for me.
You know, it's one of the things that we find at the Better Business Bureau and through our scam tracker program that we have on our website is that we see this persistence of people that are trying to scam Hawaii residents out of their money, in particular because we're such a polite culture. We're very, amiable, we're trusting, we're still very localized. And when people either call on the phone or you get something on the internet, you tend to trust that person. It's like that's your first instinct. And oftentimes that's what the scammers are counting on, is that trust. That you have some information on your website that's particularly interesting that I'd looked at, which is the Scammers Playbook. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? I think it's a great resource.
Sure. So AARP, since about 1995, we've been working with law enforcement, and they gave us about 500 undercover audio tapes of scams in progress. And so my colleague analyzed those tapes and basically coded them as to which persuasion tactics were being used to get people's money from them. And he came up with 6 key persuasion tactics, and they're not all used in isolation. Some of them are used mostly in combination. But we created the Con Artist Playbook because we figured if we can show people what persuasion tactics are being used and they recognize them, then maybe they'll avoid falling for that in the first place. We also did a number of jailhouse interviews with convicted con artists, and they offered their personal advice, which very much was in sync with what we found through the analysis of those tapes.
So in terms of the information then, you got the information from the criminals. You were able to document it and put it in a playbook, if you will, that we can give to individuals in the community to help protect themselves.
Right.
What's like the number one or the biggest thing that those criminals rely on, or what do they use for those folks that don't have access to the internet and can't pull down that playbook right away? What are some of what's that one thing, if you had to talk about?
Well, all the con artists are pretty much in agreement that they like to get people into a high emotional state where they're not thinking rationally and can't make good decisions. So they actually call that getting them into the ether.
I think that the ether is one of those things that you think about it and it has several different meanings. I mean, probably for older people, it may be like the gas that you would get.
Yeah, right? You're thinking of Victorian times, right? Putting someone under. Right? But they liken it to when you first fall in love. Nobody's thinking rationally and making good decisions the first time they fall in love. So if they can get somebody into that emotional state, then they'll use it against them. So one of the key strategies that they use to get them there is called victim profiling. So that's basically when they call you up and they're very personable and very friendly. And what they're doing is they're sharing some information, probably false information, to have you share information. And the more you tell them, the more they're creating a profile about you. So they'll take notes. A brother and a sister. Oh, brother lost in the war. Oh, really loves the dog, takes the dog out all the time. And they're taking notes. Oh, child with mental illness, and they're creating the profile. And once they figure out what it is that can push your button and trigger that emotional state, they'll use it to manipulate you into doing what they want.
And this is particularly dangerous because a lot of our, particularly seniors, are at home alone. The phone rings, they pick up the phone, they may be waiting for a call from a child or a grandchild and are looking for someone to talk with and maybe pay attention to them and listen to their stories. So they're more likely to share, is what I understand.
Yeah, I hate to categorize things by age, but the truth is anybody who's lonely is going to be more susceptible to that friendly voice. And of course, all they want to do is listen, because the more they listen, the more access they have to you, to insights about you, and that's what they're going to use. I remember my colleague and I interviewed a woman once who had given up, I think, $800,000 of her money to a con artist. And her house was filled with piles of sweepstakes offerings, FedEx packages. I mean, it looked like she was a mail clearinghouse. But when she told us about the man who had defrauded her, it was really fascinating. He had invented a family. She was alone, right? And he said to her, you know, my kids don't really have a grandma. Maybe you can be their grandma. We're going to plan a family road trip this summer. We'll drive through and visit you. And so she created a relationship with him in her mind. And every time he asked her to buy something or send a little more, she did it because this is the only family she has in her mind. And it may not make sense, but when you're all alone and you have somebody who will listen and who creates that for you, it can be very persuasive.
You know, it's something that is not only a warning for the kupuna out there, but it's also a warning for their children. It's one of the things that I know that I personally am very busy, and I know that all of us are very busy in our daily lives and with work and our outside commitments and raising children. It's that warning to not lose track of what your parents and your grandparents are doing. Stay in contact with them, in other words, is a good safety net.
Yeah, the Eden Alternative, one of the things that they say is that the major plagues of aging are boredom, isolation, and loneliness. Those are the three things that really contribute to decline. And so as family members, if you can do what you can to offset that, you can do a whole host of good beyond fraud. And there are lots of places on Oahu and around the Hawaiian Islands where people can go to have social opportunities for elders. They're free, you know, through our Parks and Rec sites, our senior centers. So if you do have family members, you could help them that way. I am very worried about the many people who don't have family members. A lot of our older adults in the Waikiki area, for example, they came here from elsewhere. They don't have family on island.
I used to be a member of the board of the Waikiki Community Center, and one of the active senior centers in the community in Waikiki in particular. And it's really important to have those resources available in the community, and one of the reasons that organizations like ours partner together to provide those resources to ensure that there are those opportunities for folks to take advantage of.
Sure, and one of the great things about the Waikiki Community Center is you don't have to live in the geographic area to take advantage of it, so you could ride the bus all the way from Wahiawa if you wanted to.
Great programs there for that. You know, when we think about some of the other tactics that are used besides the getting in the ether,
sure.
Once they get the seniors into the ether in terms of how they're looking to lure that money out of them, you had mentioned something about that there was the continual asking that
Sure.
happens.
Well, why don't I talk a little bit about some of the persuasion tactics? So the number one persuasion tactic used is we call it Samson Riches, which is basically the idea that there's something you want, but just because of your station in the world or life, you can't have it. I want $1 million. I can't have it. I wasn't born into wealth, and doing community outreach just doesn't pay that much, right? And so the con artists will dangle these phantom riches out there in a way that makes them seem accessible. And so maybe part of your brain is saying, oh, this sounds too good to be true, because it is. It sounds too good to be true, but what if it's not? What if this is real? And so you see the phantom riches a lot with sweepstakes and lottery scams. And so I always tell people, first of all, if you didn't enter, it's probably unlikely that you won.
Yeah.
There's no magical fairy godmother out there entering you into lotteries and sweepstakes and suddenly you won, right?
Yeah. I say that the prize bus will not be pulling up to your house to give you $10 million.
Yeah.
Just because you sent them $5,000. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and you know, gambling is illegal in Hawaii. So chances are, if you get an offer like that, it's an illegal offer, right? And then finally, let's say you did win $10 million. Is it really likely that if you won $10 million, they expect you to put $20,000 up front out in a personal check? Of course not. I think they would figure a way to take the $20,000 out of the $10 million. So you should never pay money up front to claim a prize winning, ever.
That's probably one of the largest red flags. At that point, if you think you may have entered something and you can't remember, anytime someone asks you to wire them money or send them a check or get a a money order or a prepaid card and give them the number over the phone. It's like, don't do it. Just hang up the phone.
Yeah, if you wire money, it's basically like giving cash. You cannot reclaim it. So don't wire money. And the gift card thing is exactly the same. Enough said. But
enough said on that one. It's like,
it makes me mad.
And it's so sad because what's unfortunate about this particular scam is that once they have their hooks into you, you will always get a call back. You'll get another call. Oh, now we need the processing fee, and then you need the transportation fee, and then there's this tax that needs to be paid, and as long as you keep sending them money, they keep calling you back.
Right, and my colleague, the one who analyzed all the tapes, he wrote a book about fraud, and one of the things that he noted is that people who have fallen victim to a fraud in the sense that they've actually given money, they in order to protect their self-esteem, they actually become in a little bit of denial about it, a lot of bit of denial, and they will keep sending money because they have to keep up this sort of fantasy that they didn't fall for it. And so in the process of covering up their shame for having fallen for it the first time, they fall for it over and over and over again. And then the other thing that people may not realize is happens, even if you're entering a legitimate sweepstake, any contest you're entering, once you've done that, you've might as well put a big X on your forehead that says, I am available to be tempted into this, right? Because then what happens is that those companies will sell those lists to telemarketers and others who will either try to sell you something legitimately or defraud you. So the con artists call those mooch lists, right? Once you're on a mooch list, you're going to be on everyone's mooch list because they're making money selling that list.
So, and that can even happen if you may enter a legitimate sweepstakes. Or
it absolutely happens.
Right?
If you enter the Publishers Clearinghouse, you will be on a mooch list.
Wow, that's kind of scary because it's one of those things that you see and you hear about. And we even had a report just last week of an elderly gentleman that knows me personally and sent me this sweepstakes notification from Publishers Clearinghouse that he won $10 million, and they had the BBB seal all over it that said, we're an accredited business and you can trust us and send us this money. Fortunately he called and said, this just doesn't look right. I was like, you know what, actually, you're right. It's not for real. It's something that they are trying to defraud you. And the scammers are very good at it. And it turned out he did enter the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. So it was one of those things where he's wondering, well, geez, is this really for real? Good thing he checked with us.
Which actually brings up, I understand after the banks sent out the Is This For Real brochure that BBB got a ton of calls from people who thought they had won.
Yep.
And were mad that they hadn't and never took the time to read the inside, which was an anti-fraud message.
Exactly. We had a tremendous amount of people that called. And it was one of those things where we were kind of, worried about it at first, saying, oh my gosh, that we have a public relations guffaw, that we made a mistake in sending this out. And what it did was it gave us an opportunity to talk to those people that may have fallen for a scam and help walk them through what that looked like. It was a really good learning opportunity.
I think it created a really great teachable moment because you had more than 60, if I recall, a lot of people.
And it was only one bank that sent them out in their statements, so it wasn't like millions of people received it. It was a very small segment of the population that received that mailer.
Scary.
Yeah, very much so. And in terms of what people locally can do, what are some of the things that folks are at risk of that maybe they don't think about in their daily lives in Hawaii? What are, wasn't there a study you guys did?
Yeah, we just did a research survey that came out a couple weeks ago to find out how open people in Hawaii are to being defrauded. And there are some really easy things that people can do to prevent fraud, but they're not doing right now. So one thing is, if you live in a standalone house instead of a condo and you have a regular mailbox, you could switch that to a locking mailbox, which basically the part the letter carrier picks up, it doesn't lock, but the part the letter carrier delivers is locking. So that's a simple thing that people could do.
Well, why is that important? I mean, it's like, we know, but for people at home, why would you want to do that?
Well, let's say you've just ordered checks from the bank and you receive those checks in your mailbox. Anybody could walk by and take them out. Credit card offers, anything with your personal identity, bank statements. You want to protect that because it would be fairly easy for somebody to just open your mailbox and take it and then create a whole slew of trouble for you.
And that's happened locally several times. I mean, there are people that are serving time in jail right now that would pick a neighborhood and they would drive around and follow the mail carrier around and just take all of the mail out of the mailboxes that were open and available. People don't realize there are people there that do this.
Yeah, one of the best resources you can have in your neighborhood is an older adult that we call them the nosy neighbor who's looking out at the street all the time, because otherwise, if you don't have a locking mailbox, it really could happen. And also your garbage, we found from our study that a lot of people are not shredding their documents. That's a simple thing to do. AARP and BBB both do free shredding events, but also for just a few dollars, you could pick up a personal shredding machine and shred those offers. But with identity theft, you really don't want people to get your personal information so that they can open other accounts for you and have that sent elsewhere, right? So identity theft prevention is one of the keys here. So you want to check out your credit report on a regular basis, because then you can see if somebody has done that. I did have a friend whose own brother had opened up a bunch of accounts in his name and just had the bills sent out elsewhere, and he found himself $60,000 in debt based on his ne'er-do-well brother. And then his mother, of course, begged him and pleaded him not to report him to the police. So he ended up as a graduate student with $60,000 in credit card debt based on a family member. So, I mean, it's not always a family member, but you want to check your credit report and make sure you know about every count that's under your name, right? You want to shred the documents so people can't get your personal information. Don't leave your wallet in the car. A surprising number of Hawaii residents leave their wallets in the car or their checkbook.
I had that happen to a friend of mine, right at Christmas time, and not only were her credit cards and her ID and checkbook in there, but she also had several dozen store cards, the prepaid cards and the gift cards that she was going to go Christmas shopping with. And so those are as good as cash. It's all gone.
Yeah. And don't carry your Social Security number in your wallet. A lot of older adults carry their Medicare card, which has their Social Security number on it. And so actually, Congress just passed a law where they're going to start phasing out that, so that after a while, Medicare cards will not have the Social Security number on it. But what you can do now is, if you've already got your provider, just make a Xerox copy of your Medicare card and black out the number and carry the Xerox copy in your wallet and leave the other card in your lockbox at home.
That's
So,
really good advice.
yeah, just simple things like that. I'm trying to think what I didn't cover. Oh, online banking. A lot of older adults feel that they're more at risk if they do their banking online, but as long as they're using a secure bank website, they're not. And it gives them the opportunity even daily to go in and check and see what their account activity is. So you're more likely to monitor it frequently if you're banking online.
Yeah, because otherwise your bank statements may come every 30 days. And then you won't notice that if someone got a hold of your debit card, or if, let's say, you have someone that you've enlisted to help you at home, and maybe you've given access to your debit card or your credit card, and if that person is dishonest and stealing from you, you wouldn't know it for 30 or 35, 40 days until your account is practically cleaned out.
We did an event last week on Maui, and a woman told me that luckily she noticed because she monitors her accounts, but somebody had used her card number at a local bookstore and in Brazil on the same day. Luckily, she was monitoring it and she was able to stop it right away, but she doesn't know how they got the information. Con artists are really creative about how they get information, so we just have to be constantly on guard.
One of the other things that I see before we wrap up is that a lot of our adults are starting to use more technology. They're getting smartphones, they're getting tablets, those kind of things. And one of the things that we see is they're not setting passwords on those devices. I mean, it's important to set a password, right?
That came up in the survey. Many people are not setting passwords, or they're using the same password for everything. Even though it's hard to remember passwords, it really pays off to create a system and to have a password. I have a password on my phone, and I mostly use it to keep my daughter out of the phone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm confident that if I leave it somewhere, somebody's not going to get in and get all my contacts and my banking information and every app I access.
Yeah. And there's one other thing that we warn people about on the smartphones and the tablets is under the settings, you want to make sure that you don't leave your Wi-Fi signal open or the Bluetooth open as searchable or discoverable.
Good point.
Because there are people out in the community that have the ability to, and the technological sophistication to search you out, connect to your device, and then take the information from it. That's another area that we see starting to happen. And any particular closing thoughts you have, things you'd like to encourage people to do to protect themselves? You know,
Sure.
we have lots of information available. How can people reach out to you to find out how to protect themselves?
Well, we're really encouraging everybody to join the AARP Fraud Watch Network. You do not have to be an older adult to join. It's open to people of all ages, and it's free. And basically, if you join the network, you're going to get a bi-weekly email that tells you about the top frauds in the state of Hawaii and across the country. If you're not on email, you'll get a quarterly newsletter. We have a toll-free number where we have a volunteer-staffed call center. So if you think you've been a victim of fraud and need some advice on how to report it or what you can do next, you can call that call center at any time. And then we have an interactive fraud map on there. So if you're on Maui and you get defrauded or somebody tries to defraud you, you can actually post to the website and let your neighbors know. We're trying to really create a movement where people in Hawaii are sharing what's happening to them so that other people don't fall for it. So AARP.org/fraudwatch network, or they can just go to our AARP.org/HI website. We'll have all our public events listed. Our brochures are free, so contact us and we'll be happy to send you the Con Artist Playbook or the Fraud Watch Network card. So I guess join our network. Help us fight fraud. Oh, and if you'd like to volunteer, we're always looking for volunteers to help us on everything, and we need speakers and volunteers to help staff educational tables at fairs and events.
And that's really important because it really is changing the mindset in the community. And AARP in Hawaii has about 150,000 members right now.
Right,
so
right.
Looking for more, and it's not very expensive to join, so it's definitely something that we all want to encourage.
Absolutely, but you do not have to be a member to be a part of the Fraud Watch Network. It's open to anyone.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jackie. I really appreciate your being here and sharing with us this very important information that it's going to help not only seniors but their children and grandchildren, help to really understand the risks that are out there that the community faces as a whole. Because when fraud happens to a senior, it doesn't just happen to the senior, it happens to the entire family. So Jackie Boland, AARP Hawaii's Director of Community Outreach, mahalo for joining us today and sharing with us your mana'o. And I want to thank you for joining us. Again, this is Gregory Dunn, President and CEO of Hawaii's Better Business Bureau. Thank you for joining us on today's issue of Is It For Real?